Hi, I am Dr. Julie Brown, your Carrick trained concussion doctor and board certified chiropractic neurologist. Today I'm going to review another study that I found interesting as it can apply to my adult patients, in my opinion, though this is a mouse study and it cannot be done on humans, and I'll explain why in a moment. The title of this paper is called Metabolic Induction and Early Responses of Mouse Blastocyst Developmental Programming Following Maternal Low-Protein Diet Affecting Lifelong Health. So they looked at a low-protein diet in mice and wondered if it had an effect on their offspring later in life. They looked at the amino acid profiles, metabolites, and insulin and glucose, and they wanted to look at these things because they stimulate what's called mTOR, or a mammalian target of rapamycin, which is related to growth. We want growth, but we don't want overgrowth in something like a tumor, so it gets implicated in cancer a lot of the time, but we still need mTOR throughout the day, maybe just not the amount in which we get this stimulation. So they look at the uterus environment, so the amino acids, insulin, all that. They look at the serum, and then they look at the blastocyst. Now, the blastocyst is created after the sperm and the egg come together, and the outside lining of it is called the trophoblast that holds all the nutrients that's going to give signaling until they're connected to the blood supply in the uterus and can get nutrients a different way. So what people don't realize is nutrient signaling is so important to get cells to divide and do what they need to do. If you don't have enough nutrients, this division does not happen appropriately. One of the big ones that comes to mind is retinoic acid from your vitamin A. So moms, you need to make sure you have your vitamin A, not too much, but definitely not too little. And nutrient sensing, what it does is it tells these cells, hey, we have enough to grow, and it stimulates different genetic expressions to make me grow my right arm and my right leg and my left arm and it knows how to divide. If it didn't, I would have a mitt. I wouldn't have, be separated from my body. So nutrient sensing is very important in this case. Now, this study they did on mice, like I said, and they used a low-protein diet in which they called 9% casein the low-protein diet. Casein is the protein that is found in dairy in particular. So they had this 9% casein diet. Now, when I went to the CDC just to get the averages of what the US population eats, they had a reference to 2007, 2008, and men typically ate about 2,500 kilocalories, and 15% of that was protein, whereas women ate close to 1,800, and it was 15% protein. They didn't specify where this protein came from, if they looked at plants and animals, but when you try to figure that out, I haven't quite been able to identify what is sufficient, because that's a word that was used. You have amino acids, and put together they create proteins. So when you eat, you are eating amino acids, you're breaking them down, then your body builds them into different proteins, and you have 20 amino acids, 9 of which are essential, meaning you have to get them from your diet and your body can't make them. But the other 11 your body can make and do what they need. Also know that your insulin, for example, is made from amino acids and proteins. So you need to eat enough amino acids to handle things like carbohydrates or glucose. So when we look at vegan and vegetarian diets, yes, they're getting these proteins, because what they can do is they can eat beans and rice, for example. Beans has 8 amino acids, so it's not a complete protein, but if you match it with rice, rice will fill in that 1 amino acid that is missing. But when you do that, the amount that you need to eat to get to the sufficient level of amino acids to create proteins has a much bigger caloric and glycemic effect than eating something like an ounce of meat. They are different. You can look up those equations. They're out there. The person I'd refer you to listen to if you're more of a listener is Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. She has great information and she talks about her mentors, but I really appreciate the information that she puts out. Now, in this study, what they looked at was the maternal serum, and they found there was a decrease in amino acids, and they sacrificed these mice at different levels. So when they say E2.5, that means the embryo has been there for 2.5 weeks or 2.5 weeks old. They did a E3.5 and E4.5. You can go back and look at that information because the link will be below. But in the serum, the uterine fluid, and the blastocyst, they all had decreased amino acids. And when they looked at the metabolites, so when processes happen, they're measuring the metabolites in this serum, there was a decrease in insulin, but an increase in glucose, which makes sense. If you don't have insulin to carry the glucose, and you don't have insulin because you don't have the amino acids, you have an issue here. Now, why is this important? You need increased insulin and amino acids to create mTOR stimulation, to create growth during the phase in which you should be growing. And they did find that this correlated with a reduction in mTOR activation. Now, when they look at the outgrowth of the blastocysts, they found that in the low protein maternal diet compared to the normal ones, the trophoblast would flatten out against the uterine wall as soon as it could. My guess is to get nutrients because it didn't have enough in its supply to help the blastocyst grow. So there was a difference immediately with implantation. And then they correlated this later to these mice with the moms that had the low protein diet. They found that the adult mice had cardiovascular, metabolic, and behavioral disorders. So the big picture is how many of my patients had a mom that maybe didn't have enough protein, and now I'm seeing the effects of it in my office. Does it affect concussion? What's the big picture of it? Can we reverse it? I don't know these answers, but we do the best we can with what we have here. So eat your meat. I can't have kids any longer, really. I don't have kids, but if I had a mom come to me, I would be guiding them on trying to eat protein. If you're vegan and vegetarian, it might be worth eating meat at least during this time to give to your child, and then you can go back to what you would like to do later. Not medical advice, but probably how I'd handle it in my office. If you like this content, feel free to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.